Before we start today's video, please remember to subscribe, share our videos with others, and browse the channel to watch other enjoyable videos. Imagine you are the King of Denmark, and it is a Saturday morning. You have just endured 5 long days of the hardest job in the country, and are excited to sleep all day. You wake up to an alarm saying that your country is being invaded. If you turn off the alarm, you surrender and can go back to sleep. Would you turn off the alarm like the real king did? Nazi Germany's primary objective in 1940 was to secure a route for its invasion of Norway, which would give them control over vital iron ore shipments from Sweden, and provide strategic military positioning in the North Sea. Germany needed to control Denmark to ensure its naval and air forces could secure this access. By 1940, Germany had one of the most powerful and modern military forces in the world. The Wehrmacht was equipped with well-coordinated land, air, and naval forces. Denmark, in contrast, had a small and outdated military, and was not prepared to withstand a full-scale invasion from such a powerful adversary. Denmark's armed forces were simply not in a position to effectively resist Germany. Denmark had a relatively small army, navy, and air force, and the country had not invested heavily in modernizing and educating its military forces. The Danish government knew that in the event of a war, it would be vastly outmatched by Germany. In contrast, Germany's military was prepared for a quick, decisive campaign, as demonstrated in the speed of their invasions across Europe. Denmark, like many other smaller European nations at the time, had pursued a policy of neutrality. Denmark had hoped to avoid direct involvement in the escalating tensions in Europe. However, Germany's demand for access to Denmark's territory was non-negotiable. In contrast to other countries like Poland, Denmark was not a strategic target for a large-scale conquest, but its location was critical for Germany's control of Northern Europe. Germany's invasion of Denmark was not simply for control over Denmark itself, but was part of a broader strategic goal to secure access to Sweden's natural resources, especially iron ore, and to establish control over Norway. The Danish government understood that any resistance would lead to significant destruction, and this made the decision to surrender more appealing than fighting an unwinnable battle. On April 9, 1940, Denmark was informed by Germany that it was to be invaded and occupied to prevent a potential British or French intervention. Denmark was given an ultimatum: either surrender or face complete destruction. The Danish leadership understood the consequences of resisting, particularly given the German military superiority and Denmark's strategic position. King Christian of Denmark played a key role in the decision-making process. Despite his patriotic feelings and desire to resist the invasion, the Danish government ultimately decided that the best way to protect the nation and minimize damage was to surrender to Germany. The political leadership under Prime Minister Thorvald Stauning also recognized the harsh realities of their military limitations. Denmark's surrender was essentially a decision to avoid unnecessary bloodshed and destruction. The Danish government opted to cooperate with the Germans in exchange for a degree of autonomy, allowing Denmark to maintain internal control over its affairs as much as possible under the occupation. Unlike other nations that fought to the bitter end, Denmark aimed to minimize the impact of the occupation. The German forces entered Denmark on the morning of April 9, 1940, and within hours, Denmark agreed to the terms of surrender. Denmark's surrender was not a negotiation, but more of a capitulation to the overwhelming military pressure. The terms were fairly lenient in comparison to other countries. Denmark was allowed to maintain its sovereignty and continue to function under its own government, but it was effectively under German control. While Denmark chose not to engage in armed resistance at the outset of the occupation, it did, over time, demonstrate a certain degree of resistance, particularly in regard to the persecution of Jews. In 1943, Denmark's government and citizens helped around 7,200 Jews escape Nazi persecution by ferrying them to neutral Sweden. Unlike countries such as Poland, which resisted fiercely and suffered immense devastation, Denmark's quick surrender allowed it to avoid the same level of destruction. Poland, for example, had no option but to fight back, and its defeat led to a brutal occupation. In contrast, Denmark's more pragmatic approach allowed it to avoid immediate devastation and maintain a relatively stable existence under Nazi rule, although it would eventually experience the same occupation-related difficulties as other nations. That is the end of the video, and on behalf of the OLE 20th Century History YouTube channel, thank you for watching this video, and please remember to subscribe, share our videos with others, and browse the channel to watch other enjoyable videos.